of the Black Panther Party in New York City, who's currently defending the Panther 21, and the Chief Counsel of the Youth International Party, Mr. Gerald B. Lefcourt.
I'd just like to inform you that you're, of course, all now in my offices. This is our firm. And you've come here, I assume, to ask me what happened yesterday. And my answer is that yesterday I was jailed by the judge of the Northern District of Illinois, Judge Julius Hoffman. I was jailed on an order of contempt along with Michael E. Tiger of Los Angeles, California. Mr. Tiger is a professor at UCLA Law School. He has also issued arrest warrants and contempt orders for two other attorneys who are in the Northern District of California, and their names are Michael Kennedy and Dennis Roberts. We were in jail approximately 15 hours yesterday, in custody, in court. We were sitting at counsel table in custody. I'd just like to say that my experience in jail was quite unusual. I was in jail with what I consider very good company, with Bobby Seale, the chairman of the Black Panther Party, Jerry Rubin from the Youth International Party, Michael Tiger, the professor of law school at UCLA, and myself. We are going back to Chicago on Monday, pursuant to an order of the judge, at which time he said he's going to sentence us under the contempt citation. This seems to be a summary contempt. There has been no hearing. There has been no trial. The only thing I would add to that, and I wish you'd all understand that I'm quite limited in what I could say, because he has issued orders that we are not to make statements other than that of public record. That is that all four lawyers were not intended, and we've made motions to this effect, and it's public record, not intended to try the case. That the trial lawyers were Charles R. Gary of San Francisco, California, William M. Kunstler of New York, New York, and Leonard I. Weinglass of Newark, New Jersey. And those three lawyers were the trial team. Mr. Gary is undergoing a gallbladder operation in San Francisco, and the defendants had objected to his absence. Other than that, I cannot speak, other than to say that I understand from a great number of lawyers who've called in that there will be a lawyer's demonstration in the court in Chicago on Monday. My understanding is that lawyers will be coming from all over the country who have expressed to me certain outrage.
What motivated the judge to charge you with contempt?
Well, that sort of gets into an area I'd rather have Mr. Hoffman speak to that.
Just like it, sort of go like that, and I'll answer the questions. I just want to make a statement that I think that the U.S. government has made quite clear what the stakes are in this trial as they see them. It's with some reluctance that we released the four lawyers in question. In fact, I personally am quite reluctant to release Jerry Lefcourt, who has successfully defended me in the courts in New York and around this country for the past 2 years. It was only because that there are a number of other political conspiracy trials going on around the country, and we released him because we feel a particular interest in the trial of the Black Panther 21 in New York on those trumped-up charges, and Mr. Lefcourt is needed in New York City to deal with that trial. And the government knows this full well, and that's why these harassments and that's why these arrests and intimidations of our lawyers is currently going on. This is a sign of fascism in America. When you have U.S. Marshals dragging out lawyers that the defendants have already said do not represent them in this case, when they're dragged out of the room, when you have lawyers being held on no bail in this country, who have no criminal records or anything, who are members of the bar, when they're dragged out before other lawyers, I think we're at a critical stage in the history of this country. And the stage in the legal system is only symbolic of what's going on in the rest of the country. Namely, are we to live under a system of death and brutality and injustice, or are we to embark on a new nation dedicated to life and love? And I think that's what's at stake here in this trial. It's in the words of the American Civil Liberties Union, this is the most important political trial in the history of the country. And we know that lawyers all around the country are going to protest the treatment of their fellow colleagues and are going to come into Chicago on Monday and make their statements felt in this federal court.
Why did Bobby Seale reject your defense attorney?
That Bobby Seale did not reject any attorneys. You see, these lawyers are being held as ransom. The judge and the prosecutors have made that quite clear. If we are willing to give up our Sixth Amendment rights and relinquish Mr. Charles Gary from this case, these lawyers will be set free and will not be intimidated and harassed. That's what's the issue in this stake. We want Charles Gary in that courtroom defending us, and he's currently in the hospital. He cannot make this. We've had a number of motions for a 6-week delay, which any lawyer in this country and anybody knows that in a complicated case like this, with our chief counsel missing, that in any other court in the land, we would be given a 6-week delay or a delay to so that our counsel of our choice could be in the courtroom. And the way to dramatize this, you see, and the way for Bobby to dramatize his confidence in Charles Gary and the treatment that the judge was doing to the rest of the lawyers, and Mr. Gary in particular, was to say that Charles Gary is his only counsel.
And the others are fired. That's what he said, didn't he?
I'm not sure if he used those exact words, but he made it quite clear to us that Charles Gary is his only lawyer. We've made it quite clear that Charles Gary is one of our lawyers and belongs in the courtroom. And this is the way that, if you were there, Bobby Seale got up and made that statement to the judge that he was not being availed his constitutional rights, and the prosecutor and the judge and the government very uptight about this, because not having the proper counsel of your choice as guaranteed under the jive U.S. Constitution, Sixth Amendment, is possibly grounds for reversal of this case, and they're locked into a box, and the only way that they can get out is to hold 4 other lawyers up for ransom. And that's what they're doing.
This trial is a fakery or a facade? How do you assess it then?
Well, our view of this trial is that the 8 of us were left alone with the 12 members of the jury, you see, that we could convince them not only of our innocence, but that we were right in what we did in Chicago, and they would join us in the next massive demonstration in this country against the war and against the harassment of our cultural revolution and against the racism that's going on in this country. But the jury is locked in. The jury is locked in by an unconstitutional, undemocratic law that's designed specifically to end the protest movement and dissent in this country. So therefore, we're playing with a stacked deck, with a stacked judge, a judge that's had more reversals than any judge in the U.S. bench history, a judge that's a government yes man, a judge that's 74 years old, who cannot relate to us in any way possible, cannot judge us.
How many lawyers do you expect for this demonstration?
Last year into the streets to protest the Democratic Convention, that these lawyers will overcome those barriers and will come to Chicago. The most prestigious law firm in Chicago is defending the lawyers. And they're outraged. The lawyers that sit in the trial and watch this case are shocked.
How many of them do you think are outraged enough to come to Chicago? Can you put a figure on that?
Well, I mean, that's going to... I cannot personally put a figure on that. I'm not in touch with that many lawyers. I don't understand their situation. I would expect a large outpouring of support for these lawyers. If there isn't, well, it's a sorry day for the American legal system, that's all.
Who's the legal firm that's representing you 4 lawyers?
Tom Sullivan from the Jenner and Sullivan firm. Jenner is Jenner. Sullivan firm in Chicago.
What do you
Excellent law firm.
What do you expect to happen to you on Monday?
All I know is I'm going in to be sentenced. It's conceivable and quite possible that I can receive a 6-month sentence.
You plan to appeal the sentence?
Of course.
If we're given that, if we're allowed that under this judge is a hanging judge.
What do you see in store for yourself on Monday?
Well, in store for each day, in fact, each hour in this trial brings up incidences and injustices that were totally unpredictable. I mean, we can plan and plan and plan. We get in the courtroom, and a judge will make some decision that's totally incomprehensible. So we will have to take each step as it comes. I think that this harassment, intimidation of other revolutionary lawyers in this country is what's at stake when we come into trial on Monday morning. And the defendants and the trial counsel lawyers are all going to be running the risk of contempt because we are going to protest most vigorously inside the court and outside treatment of these lawyers and the fact that we know quite well what the government has up its sleeve, namely that it wants to take these lawyers away from other important trials around the country.
Have you or the other lawyers been in touch with the American Bar Association on this? Do you know where they stand?
I've only been out of jail a few hours, and quite frankly, I haven't been in touch with anybody except some lawyers who have called me sort of friends and who have indicated to me that they're planning to come to Chicago in large numbers on Monday morning.
When were you released yesterday?
Late last night, and the Circuit Court of Appeals, the Seventh Circuit, overruled Judge Hoffman's order of no bail for the lawyers and issued us a release on our own recognizance. Therefore, we are free without any bail at all.
Have you conferred with any counsel here in New York today?
A few. We're going to be working, I'm here in my offices now to start working on briefs in support of our position for Monday morning.
Do you feel the action represents harassment or intimidation?
I think at this point, I'd be wise if I do not answer that question.
Abbie, I have one more question for you. At one point, you're described as having blown a kiss at the jury in this trial. What was your reason for doing that?
Well, it's I ain't going to answer. You had to see it. That's tough to explain. I would say that one thing that's been very encouraging to us in this trial is the fact that the people of Chicago have made it quite clear that they're on our side in this case. The Cubs have lost the pennant, and they're rooting for the Chicago conspiracy. We walk through the streets of Chicago. We're constantly greeted and hugged, and people come up and shake our hands and wish us well. Numbers of telegrams and letters of support from people who call themselves members of the conspiracy are pouring into us, the Federal Building, Chicago, Illinois, and it's unbelievable. We sit at this table. Two of our brother lawyers sit with marshals behind them. They're under guard. Two of our defendants, Bobby Seale and Jerry Rubin, sit under guard. And most of the spectators, at one point there were about 175 spectators in the audience. And our trial counsel, Leonard Weinglass, said we would like the friends and family of the defendants to rise and show what a public trial this is. 12 out of 175 stood up.
In the courtroom, somebody from CBS, by the way, came up and asked me a question. Before I had a chance to answer him, a federal marshal informed him that I was not permitted, as a prisoner, to speak to anybody.
You were counsel for the defendants and in the custody of federal marshals in the courtroom.
That's correct. I had fish for lunch in jail.
Lousy. I've been in that jail, and it's not a good trip. Cook County Jail is probably the worst jail in the country. The trip, Bobby Seale and Jerry Rubin describing their kidnapping out of California without the government even notifying their lawyers, and being driven across 6 states night and day, and stored in jails all across the country, being kept in leg irons and hand chains, with chains around their whole body, with a marshal threatening to blow their heads off with shotguns if they moved 1 inch. The story of their intimidation is quite remarkable, to say the least. And treatment in the Cook County Jail is quite brutal. It's the worst jail in America.
I know that you're bound by judges' directions, but would you say that you consider this an unusual proceeding for judges, for lawyers in a court representing defendants to be treated this way?
I sort of concur with what Mr. Kunstler said in court yesterday, that he's never heard of a case where his co-counsel were in custody during the trial.
Says not only, I should add that not only is Jerry under restrictions from the judge to talk about this case, but he's under restrictions from the federal government because this organizing a lawyers' demonstration in Chicago and mentioning it to news media is a violation of the Anti-Riot Act, the same law under which we're being tried. That's what's at stake here in this country, whether or not national demonstrations are going to be allowed. It's 10 years right now for what we're doing in this room.
Could the fact that you're holding a press conference right now have any bearing on the case?
It most certainly can have a bearing. But we don't care. The attitude of the defendants is that the jury is the people of this country. It's not the U.S. government. It's not the judge. Our whole strategy is to convince these 12 members of the jury that when they see what happened in Chicago in terms of recordings, in terms of the government's case, in terms of the movie pictures that'll be shown, in terms of our case, that they are the supreme authority in the court and they are going to set us free. And they are going to be symbolic of the rest of the people in this country. And our trial is before the people of this country.
You accuse Mayor Daley of calling the shots in his trial?
No. I would say that what Lyndon Johnson and Mayor Daley started in the streets of Chicago, Nixon and Attorney General Mitchell have vowed to finish in the courts. It's just a refined procedure of what went on last year. If you study the attitude of the government now to newsmen, their recent arrest of 13 newsmen, their banning of interviews and pictures in the courts, in the court building, in the courtyard around the court, their treatment of newsmen, their harassment of them, and their search when they come into the rooms. If you examine all this, if you examine the relationship of the judge and compare him to Mayor Daley, you'll find out that this is just a refined, sophisticated way of dealing with our movement in the same way that what happened in the streets was a brutal way. Same exact system.
There's another demonstration plan.
He just missed the sinking of the Titanic.
Well, then Abbie, should the judge...
He got tired blood, and like, he gets tired. Jared Hoffman. Should he disqualify himself? Well, what do you mean disqualify himself? We had a number of motions asking him to disqualify himself. He's made a... If you represent the youth revolution in this country, he has stock in the Brunswick Corporation, which is a major supplier of ammunitions to Vietnam. And so therefore the war in Vietnam, which is an important issue, racism, which is an important issue, harassment of the Cultural Revolution, which is an important issue. All these, the judge has made it quite clear in the way that he lives, in the people that he hangs around with. He's also a lush.
Would you say, then, that you cannot get a fair trial anywhere?
Anywhere in this country? Yes, of course, we can get a fair trial before the people of this country. Everybody in the whole world. Look, man, everybody...
Could you get it in
look,
another city?
Look, man, the whole world saw what happened in Chicago. The government's own official report called it a police riot. Ramsey Clark, the Attorney General, who is going to be a witness in this case and going to testify about how we negotiated for permits for 5 months straight, you know, and we were denied our constitutional rights. There's nobody except this cracker judge, the Attorney General, Butcher Mitchell, and Nixon and Daley, who believe that we are guilty of these charges. That's all.
Are you saying the judge in Chicago is a racist?
Of course I'm saying he's a racist. Why not? Of course he's a racist.
How?
Well, I think it's quite clear in his attitude towards the potential black jurors. You know, were you in domestic service? Oh, you're a good cook, dearie. He belongs to, like, the Post and Patter Club in Chicago, which is a racist organization, does not allow black people in its organization, and 2 other clubs of similar nature. He's a racist.
Why do you think that he has not been...
he owns stock in it.
What did he say in court that made you think he was a racist?
Well, one thing was that the first potential juror who raised his hand was a black man to disqualify himself, said that his wife had been in the service, had been employed by Thomas Foran, a prosecuting attorney 6 years ago. And the judge said in this very condescending plantation manner, oh, was she in domestic service? And immediately Mr. Foran recognized that the judge was showing his racism, and he stood up to correct it and said, oh, no, she was a secretary in the office, and a very good one, I might add, and all this. But the judge has made it quite clear with these sly remarks that there's no doubt in anybody's mind that sits in the courtroom that he's a racist.
Have you helped your case with these remarks that you're making now?
Our case is being tried before the people of this country in the streets of Chicago. It's a public case. I mean, the only way that we can successfully defend against this case is to build, in fact, a vast conspiracy that's going to wreck this government.
It is said that Bobby Seale held himself a bit apart from the other 7
Well,
defendants.
that is not true at all. The only complicated legal maneuver is because that Bobby Seale, in particular, has a special attachment to Charles Gary because he's chief counsel of the Black Panther Party. I have the same attachment to Mr. Lefcourt, who successfully kept me out of courts for 2 years. The nature of political revolution in this country is that the clients, the defendants, and their lawyers are blended in the courtroom scene, and we're all brothers, and we're all activists, and we have particular personal attachments to our lawyers. And I think that that's what's at stake here, and the constitutionality of Mr. Seale being deprived the right of counsel.
And 2 lawyers have been
Charles
placed in
Gary is the
custody.
chief counsel for all of us.
2 lawyers have been placed in
2 lawyers,
custody
that's
now.
true.
Yes,
Yes. So we have no doubt that all the lawyers are going to be locked up after this trial.
Why?
Well, because that the judge has made it quite clear in his rulings and his attitude, contemptuous behavior. He cites them for a number of times, says that appropriate action will be taken with them at the end of this trial. Statements like that lead us to believe that these lawyers are going to hang.